The water was freezing. The screams were deafening. And in just 2 hours and 40 minutes, over 1,500 people would be dead. But this is not a story about death. This is a story about the 706 who survived and what they did to stay alive. Welcome to English Through Stories. Today, you'll learn emergency vocabulary, past tense narratives, and emotional expressions through one of history's most dramatic true stories. Let's begin. Let me introduce you to 3 real passengers, 3 different lives, 3 different stories, but all connected by one terrible night. First, meet Charles Lightoller. He was the 2nd officer on the Titanic. An officer is someone who has an important job and gives orders to other workers. Charles was 38 years old, and he had worked on ships for more than 20 years. He was experienced. That means he knew his job very well. He was responsible. That means people trusted him to make good decisions. Let me introduce you to 3 real passengers, 3 different lives, 3 different stories, but all connected by one terrible night. First, meet Charles Lightoller. He was the 2nd officer on the Titanic. An officer is someone who has an important job and gives orders to other workers. Charles was 38 years old, and he had worked on ships for more than 20 years. He was experienced. That means he knew his job very well. He was responsible. That means people trusted him to make good decisions. Next, meet Violet Jessop. Violet was a stewardess. A stewardess is a woman who serves food and helps passengers on a ship. She was 24 years old and came from Argentina, but her family was Irish. Violet was hard-working. She worked long hours every day. She was also brave, even though she didn't know it yet. Finally, meet Eva Hart. Eva was only 7 years old. She was traveling with her mother and father. They were going to Canada to start a new life. That means they wanted to live in a different place and have new opportunities. Eva's mother was worried about the ship. She had a bad feeling. She felt anxious. That means nervous or afraid that something bad might happen. April 10th, 1912. The RMS Titanic set sail from Southampton, England. Set sail means to begin a journey by ship. The Titanic was enormous. That means extremely big. It was 882 feet long. It had 10 decks. A deck is a floor on a ship. It carried 2,224 people, passengers and crew. Everyone said the Titanic was unsinkable. Unsinkable means it cannot sink. It cannot go down into the water. The newspapers called it the Ship of Dreams. Rich people paid thousands of dollars for first-class tickets. Poor people saved their money for third-class tickets to go to America. Officer Lightoller inspected the ship every day. To inspect means to look carefully and check that everything is safe. He checked the lifeboats. He examined the equipment. To examine means to look at something closely. But there was a problem. The Titanic had lifeboats for only 1,178 people, but there were 2,224 people on board. This was legal, it followed the law, but it was not safe. For 4 days, the journey was magnificent. Magnificent means extremely beautiful and impressive. Violet Jessop worked in the dining room. She served meals to wealthy passengers. To serve means to bring food and drinks to people. She worked from early morning until late at night. She was always exhausted. That means extremely tired. But Violet didn't complain. To complain means to say that you are unhappy about something. She needed the money. She appreciated her job. That means she was grateful and thankful for it.
Young Eva Hart couldn't sleep at night. She was restless, unable to relax. Her mother stayed awake with her. Eva's mother had insisted on staying awake every night. To insist means to demand something strongly because you believe it's important. "Why won't you sleep, Mother?" Eva asked. "I just have a feeling," her mother said. "I want to be alert, ready if anything happens."
Officer Lightoller stood on the bridge, the place where officers control the ship. He looked at the ocean. It was calm, peaceful, and quiet. Too calm. The water was like glass. There were no waves. On the night of April 14th, he felt uneasy, uncomfortable, and worried, but not sure why. That afternoon, the Titanic received several messages. To receive means to get something. Other ships sent warnings by radio. A warning is a message that tells you about danger. "Icebergs ahead," the messages said. An iceberg is an enormous piece of ice floating in the ocean. Icebergs are extremely dangerous because ships cannot see them easily at night. Only a small part shows above the water. Most of the ice is hidden below. Captain Smith acknowledged the warnings. To acknowledge means to show that you received information and understand it. But he didn't slow down the ship. The Titanic continued at full speed, about 22 miles per hour. Why? Some people think he wanted to arrive early. To arrive means to reach your destination. Others think he was too confident. Confident means believing strongly that everything will be fine. At 11:40 p.m., Officer Lightoller finished his shift. A shift is a period of time when you work. He went to his cabin, his small bedroom on the ship. Another officer, First Officer Murdoch, took over. To take over means to begin doing someone else's job. In the crow's nest, the high lookout point on the ship, 2 men watched the dark ocean. Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee were lookouts. A lookout is a person whose job is to watch and warn of danger. But they didn't have binoculars. Binoculars are special equipment that helps you see things far away. The binoculars were locked in a room, and no one could find the key. The night was pitch black. Pitch black means completely dark. There was no moon. The sea was still perfectly calm. Then, at 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet saw something. His heart started pounding. To pound means to beat very hard and fast. He grabbed the warning bell and rang it 3 times. Clang, clang, clang. Then he picked up the telephone. "Is anyone there?" he asked. "Yes, what do you see?" a voice answered. Fleet's voice trembled. It shook because he was nervous or afraid. "Iceberg, right ahead!" The iceberg was less than 500 yards away. The Titanic was traveling at 22 miles per hour. They had less than 40 seconds. First Officer Murdoch reacted immediately.
To react means to respond quickly to something. He ordered the crew to turn the ship. To order means to give a command. "Hard to starboard!" he shouted. To shout means to speak very loudly. Starboard means the right side of a ship. The crew turned the wheel. The ship began to turn, but it was too late. The Titanic was too big and moving too fast. At 11:40 p.m., the iceberg scraped along the right side of the ship. To scrape means to rub roughly against something. The iceberg tore open the hull, the bottom side of the ship. Many passengers didn't even notice. Some felt a slight bump. A bump is a light hit or knock. Others heard a grinding sound, a terrible noise like metal being torn. Officer Lightoller was in his cabin. He felt the ship shudder, to shake or vibrate. He jumped out of bed and quickly dressed, put on his uniform.
Down in the boiler rooms, the hot places where coal burned to power the ship, water was pouring in. To pour means to flow quickly in large amounts. Men screamed and ran. To scream means to cry out loudly in fear or pain. The cold water rushed through the rooms. To rush means to move very fast. A fireman named Frederick Barrett barely escaped. To barely escape means to almost not escape. You escape at the last moment. Water chased him up the stairs. To chase means to run after someone or something.
The ship's builder, Thomas Andrews, examined the damage. He looked horrified, extremely shocked and afraid. "How bad is it?" Captain Smith asked. Andrews' face was pale, white from fear or shock. "The ship is sinking," he said quietly. "We have maybe 1 hour, perhaps 1 hour and a half." Captain Smith couldn't believe it. He was stunned, so shocked that you couldn't think clearly. "Are you certain?" he asked. "I'm certain," Andrews replied. 5 compartments are flooded. To flood means to fill with water. The ship will sink. It's only a matter of time. Captain Smith's hands shook. To shake means to tremble or move back and forth quickly. He realized the terrible truth. To realize means to suddenly understand something. There were 2,224 people on board. There were lifeboats for only 1,178. Over 1,000 people would die. He swallowed hard, tried not to show his fear. He had to stay calm and in control. "Prepare the lifeboats," he ordered. To prepare means to get ready. "And send the distress signal." A distress signal is an emergency call for help. At 12:15 a.m., only 35 minutes after hitting the iceberg, the crew uncovered the lifeboats. To uncover means to remove the cover from something. They began to lower them into the water. To lower means to move something down. Officer Lightoller took charge on the left side. To take charge means to take control and responsibility. He looked serious and determined, firmly decided to do something. "Women and children first," he ordered. This was the rule at sea. A rule is something you must follow. But there was chaos. Chaos means complete confusion and disorder. Many passengers didn't understand. They didn't believe the ship was sinking. Some refused to get into the lifeboats. To refuse means to say no. The night was freezing, extremely cold. The air temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. -2°C. Many people thought they would be safer on the big ship. "I'm not getting in that tiny boat," one woman said. The first lifeboat had room for 65 people, but it was left with only 28. In third class, the cheapest section, passengers struggled to get upstairs. To struggle means to try very hard to do something difficult. Many didn't speak English. They were confused and frightened. Gates blocked their path. The crew wanted to keep third-class passengers away from first-class areas. Some passengers climbed over the gates. Others broke them down. Young Eva Hart was with her mother. They rushed to the boat deck, the top level where lifeboats were located. "Where's Father?" Eva asked. She was terrified, extremely afraid. "He'll be fine," her mother said, but her voice was shaking. Eva's mother held her hand tightly, very firmly. She didn't want to lose her daughter in the crowd. People were pushing and shoving. To push and shove means to use force to move through a crowd. Violet Jessop, the stewardess, was helping passengers. An officer grabbed her arm. "Get in the boat," he commanded. "But I need to help," Violet protested. To protest means to argue against something. "Now," he insisted, "we need women to set an example." Violet reluctantly got into lifeboat 16. Reluctantly means unwillingly or hesitantly. As the boat was lowered, someone thrust a baby into her arms. To thrust means to push suddenly and forcefully. "Take care of this child," a woman shouted from above. By 1:30 a.m., the front of the ship, the bow, was underwater. The back, the stern, rose up out of the ocean. People who couldn't get into the lifeboats clung to the railings. To cling means to hold on tightly. They were desperate, willing to do anything to survive. Desperate also means hopeless and very serious. The ship's band, the musicians, kept playing music. They played cheerful songs, then sad songs. They wanted to calm people's fears. Officer Lightoller worked frantically, in a wild, hurried way. He tried to launch more boats. To launch means to put boats into the water. But time was running out. Running out means there is almost no time left. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat left. There were still over 1,500 people on board. People jumped into the freezing water. The water temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, or -2°C. At that temperature, a person can survive only 15 to 30 minutes before hypothermia kills them. Hypothermia is when your body becomes dangerously cold. Officer Lightoller knew he couldn't get into a lifeboat. He was a crew member, and crew members stayed with the ship. He stood on the deck as water swept toward him. To sweep means to move powerfully across an area. "It's been an honor serving with you," he said to the other officers. Then water crashed over him. To crash means to hit with great force. He was pulled underwater. The current dragged him down. To drag means to pull forcefully. But something incredible happened. The water pushed him up toward a metal grate, a covering with holes in it. Air was trapped underneath. Trapped means caught and unable to escape. The air propelled him to the surface. To propel means to push forward with force. Lightoller gasped for air. To gasp means to breathe in suddenly because you need air urgently. His body was numb. unable to feel anything because of the cold.
He saw an overturned lifeboat, a boat that was upside down. He swam toward it. Other men were already clinging to it. About 30 men held on. "Don't move," Lightoller ordered. "If we shift our weight, we'll capsize it." To capsize means to turn over in the water. They stood on top of the overturned boat for hours. Waves splashed over them. To splash means water hitting and spreading. Their fingers were frozen. Their lips turned blue. At 2:18 a.m., the Titanic's lights went out. Everything went dark. At 2:20 a.m., the great ship broke in half. The stern, the back part, rose straight up into the air. It stood almost vertical, straight up and down like a tower. Then it plunged into the ocean. To plunge means to go down suddenly and with force. It disappeared beneath the waves. And then, the screaming began. Over 1,500 people were in the freezing water. They cried out for help. To cry out means to shout loudly. The sound was unbearable, too painful to listen to. In the lifeboats, some people wanted to go back and help, but others were afraid. They thought too many people would swamp the boats. To swamp means to fill with water and sink because of too much weight. Violet Jessop sat in her lifeboat. She held the baby close. She was traumatized, emotionally shocked by something terrible. She trembled with cold and fear. The screaming lasted for about 30 minutes. Then slowly, it stopped. The ocean became silent. Officer Lightoller stood on the overturned lifeboat. He and 30 other men balanced carefully. They couldn't sit down. They couldn't move. They had to remain perfectly still or the boat would sink.
"Stay calm," Lightoller told them. "Help is coming." But he wasn't sure. He was trying to keep morale high. Morale means the confidence and enthusiasm of a group. One by one, men slipped off the boat. To slip means to slide and fall. They fell into the water and disappeared. They died from hypothermia. "Hold on," Lightoller urged. To urge means to strongly encourage. "Just a little longer." His own body was failing. To fail means to stop working properly. He couldn't feel his legs. His vision was blurry, unclear, and difficult to see. In Lifeboat 16, Violet Jessop rowed. To row means to move a boat using oars, long poles. Her hands were blistered, damaged skin with bubbles of fluid. She was exhausted, but she kept going. The baby in her arms had stopped crying. Violet worried the baby was too cold. She wrapped her coat around the child and held the baby close to her chest. "Please survive," she whispered. To whisper means to speak very quietly. Please. Eva Hart and her mother sat in another lifeboat. Eva sobbed, cried loudly with deep sadness. To sob means to cry with sudden gasps. "I want father," she cried. Her mother held her, but said nothing. She knew Eva's father was gone. He had perished, died with the ship. Eva's mother's face showed no emotion. She was in shock, a state where you cannot think or feel normally because something terrible happened. At 4 a.m., people in the lifeboats saw lights on the horizon. The horizon is the line where the sky meets the sea. "A ship!" someone shouted. "It's a ship!" The RMS Carpathia had received the Titanic's distress signal. Captain Arthur Rostron had immediately changed course. Immediately means right away, with no delay. The Carpathia approached, moved closer. Crew members threw down rope ladders, ladders made of rope. Some survivors climbed up. Others were too weak. Crew members hauled them up in their seats. To haul means to pull with effort,
Violet Jessop reached the Carpathia. She handed the baby to a crew member. Then she climbed the ladder. Her arms ached, hurt with a constant pain. Her legs were stiff, difficult to move. When she reached the deck, she collapsed, fell down because she was too weak to stand. A doctor rushed over. "You're safe now," he said gently. Violet couldn't speak. She just nodded, moved her head to show yes. Officer Lightoller was one of the last to be rescued. When crew members pulled him from the overturned boat, he could barely stand. His face was gray, a color between black and white, showing sickness. His lips were cracked and bleeding. But he was alive. Of the 30 men on the overturned boat, only 12 survived.
The Carpathia rescued 706 people. Over 1,500 had died. Survivors sat on the deck, wrapped in blankets. They were traumatized and in shock. Some cried. Others sat silently, staring at nothing. To stare means to look for a long time without moving your eyes. Eva Hart searched for her father. Her mother had to tell her the truth. "Father didn't make it," she said softly. "He's gone." Eva broke down, started crying uncontrollably. To break down means to lose control of your emotions. She was only 7 years old. She would carry this trauma for the rest of her life. Trauma means emotional damage from a terrible experience. Officer Lightoller sat alone. He felt guilty, feeling bad because you thought you had done something wrong. He kept thinking, could I have saved more people? Should I have done something differently? This feeling, called survivor's guilt, would stay with him forever.
Violet Jessop later said this about her experience. "I thought I would never forget the sounds, the screaming, the terrible silence afterward. I was haunted by it." To be haunted means to be troubled by disturbing memories. But Violet was also grateful, thankful for being alive. "Every day after that was a gift," she said. A gift means a present, but here it means something precious. The Carpathia arrived in New York on April 18th. Thousands of people gathered at the dock. To gather means to come together in a group. They were looking for family members. Some families were reunited, brought together again. There was joy, great happiness, and relief, a feeling of comfort when something bad is over. But most families received terrible news. Their loved ones had perished. The Titanic disaster changed the world.
New safety regulations were created. Regulations are official rules. Ships now had to carry enough lifeboats for everyone. Ships had to have a 24-hour radio watch. And ships created the International Ice Patrol to warn about icebergs. Officer Charles Lightoller continued working at sea. During World War II, at age 66, he volunteered to rescue soldiers. To volunteer means to offer to do something without being asked. He was still brave and still felt responsible for others. He died in 1952, at age 78. Violet Jessop had an incredible life. She survived the Titanic in 1912. 1 year earlier, in 1911, she had survived when the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, crashed into another ship. And in 1916, she survived when another ship, the Britannic, sank in World War I. People called her Miss Unsinkable. She died peacefully in 1971 at age 83. Eva Hart never forgot that night. She became one of the most famous Titanic survivors. She gave speeches and interviews for decades. A speech is a formal talk to an audience. An interview is when someone asks you questions and records your answers.
She wanted people to remember. She wanted to honor those who died. To honor means to show respect and remember someone. Eva said, "I saw that ship sink. I never saw my father again." Someone has to keep telling the story. She died in 1996, at age 91. Today, the Titanic rests at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, 2.5 miles deep. But the story lives on. It teaches us about courage, bravery in the face of danger, about sacrifice, giving up something important for others, about humanity, compassion and kindness toward other people.
The Titanic reminds us that life is fragile, easily broken or destroyed. It reminds us to appreciate every moment. It reminds us that in our darkest hours, we can find the strength we never knew we had. Thank you for learning English with this story. Today, you learned emergency vocabulary, distress signal, evacuate, survivor, past tense narratives, crashed, sank, rescued, perished, emotional expressions, terrified, traumatized, relieved, grateful. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe for more English learning through real history. What story would you like to hear next? Leave a comment below. Remember, every story teaches us something. Every word you learn brings you closer to fluency. Keep learning, keep growing, and never give up.